Welcome back to Shotgun the Aux Podcast. You are joined today by Tom and Aidan. So this week's guest really needs no introduction, and to think back to when we started this thing, that he'd one day be joining us for a chat on the podcast still blows my mind right now. He's one of the pioneers of UK hip-hop, from legendary rap group Task Force, Mudfam and Berry Crew. It's Chester P Hackenbush. How are you doing, man?
I'm very well, thank you, Tom. Aidan, how are you guys?
Mate, sweet. I'm gassed you're on.
It's about time.
Like Tom was saying, it's just, you know, we started this thing about like a year and a half ago, and I think we were just shooting messages to names like yourself and lots of names, going like, please come on, and to think that people would actually like listen to this shit and come on, you know. when we look at like when we look back at like the analytics and stuff like this, and you know yourself as a musician, when you see like even more than 1 to 10 people that listen to your shit that you've put time into, it's just like, why the fuck are people
rewarded? Yeah,
100%.
Build it and they will come, my friends. But but that's the thing, man. We were quite naive with this when we first started out. We were kind of like, to Aidan's point, just reached out to people because we thought, yeah, they're rappers, man. They're going to want to chat and like obviously engage and stuff. But we didn't really take into account people's kind of like schedules and like lives and all of that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it's been a kind of a learning curve, but well worth it, man, leading to this episode. But we were just talking about 2020 being just like a very strange year indeed. Do you know what I mean? For everyone. What have you done, man, to kind of keep yourself sane and above board throughout all of this?
I mean, in the beginning, when there was lockdown, it didn't affect me at all because I was still going to work. Because I was a key worker, to me, I was still going back and forth to work. And the only thing that was really a problem about that is getting on the buses in the morning and on the evenings coming home and stuff. And just, I don't know, I just find I find like confined space is difficult at the best of times. So when like everybody's just in this strange environment, it becomes too science fiction for me, and I sort of get like, I struggle to even find reality in all of it sometimes. But because I was going to and from work, and I was doing what I was having to do and looking after people at work and stuff, it was keeping me grounded to that level. And then for one reason or the other, I had to come out of that particular company, and then I was just left with free time. So I was just cycling. So I was still going out, you know, and people say stay at home, whatever. But to me, you know, I'm cycling around. There's no one around me. I just don't really understand the whole philosophy of staying at home in that situation. But I know it's difficult to talk about. It's difficult to really express everyone because it gets people so heated. And then, like, there's just two extremes of this story, of this whole coronavirus. There's people who don't believe or don't want to believe, and there is people who do believe, and that's all they can believe. And they're both just extremes to me.
Yeah.
I struggle with any extremity. That's what makes them both the same, is they're extreme. The inside, the middle part, everyone's, you know, it's like if you tune a guitar string too tight, it's just going to snap. If you don't tune it up correctly and it's too slack, you're not going to get any vibration out of it. Until you tune it to the right frequency, it's not going to make a note that can make harmony with the rest of the strings. And that's how I feel like extremities are. You know, you're either too slack or you're too tight. Somewhere in all of that, we need to kind of take the road of Taoism and say, man, maybe this ain't our fight to always stand up and argue about, because it's only a fool who rushes into arguments that are based on secondhand information. And all we actually know is what we're shown on TV screens, period. Any of us, no matter what argument we're arguing. So sometimes it might be the best frequency to just say, man, who am I to think I'm big enough to piss at the ocean and expect it to turn its waves around? I'm not. I'm just going to sit here and live my life, you know. And when trouble's at my door, I'll answer my door and deal with that trouble, how that trouble needs to be dealt with. Until then, I'm not trying to be psychic and act like I know what anything is. I'm uneducated, I'm poor, and nothing, you know. So I try not to live my life in fear. But they're my beliefs, and I don't want to spread that to no one else or be misinforming anyone else. But to me, as a human being, I just want to be able to do what I want to do, because nothing I do is imposing itself on anyone else. But all of these restrictions and these strict kind of regimes, one side or the other, it don't matter. We got to tell them not to wear their masks. No, we got to tell them to wear their, like, I'm not standing on either of those sides. I am just doing what I'm doing, and I'm not telling anyone else to do what they're doing. And that's everyone's individual right. And when we lose that freedom, then I will start fighting for that freedom, because I think we all have that right to choose what we want to do as grown-ups. And the information we're being given isn't informative enough for any of us to make a stable decision, because it's clearly meant to divide us all. And I'm not trying to be divisive with anyone. So it's love to everyone. Do what you feel is best. I don't expect you to follow.
I think, to be honest, man, that's like probably the healthiest way to be. And I think you'd probably be surprised as to how many people share your view. I think it's compounded by social media. I know you recently mentioned that you've taken a break from it, which is a really healthy thing to do. I'm doing that myself when I can, because social media would have you believe that it's very kind of binary. It's one or the other. It's divisive. When in reality, a lot of people I meet share your view because it's my view. Do you know what I mean? It's taking personal accountability and.
Yeah, and that stands for most of these issues we find with like social media justice warrior kind of fighting, kind of woke mentality. It stands for a lot of that kind of thing. It's like they only offer you one extreme or another, and it just gets everyone extremely irate with each other. And really, you can't communicate with a human being when there's that much tension between you all, and it just creates division, and no one's getting anywhere. We're just going, you're this, you're that, you're that, you're this, and no one knows who any of us are because we're all just looking at a TV screen. It's time to go outside and realize who we are. It's like go and hug a tree and recognize what you are. You know what I mean? Put down your phone for a while and go and exist. Yeah. And let's stop talking about existence.
I know, man.
Yeah, you do sort of get sucked into it a bit though, because I mean, I feel like, do you know what? I've picked up a bad habit recently. Like every time I get the bus from work every day and like going to the supermarket and stuff, and I'm quite happy to wear a mask. I'm neither here nor there, but I'm just quite happy to wear a mask. But when I see someone not wearing a mask, I kind of think like, oh, he's not wearing a mask. But then I'm just like, wait, why the fuck am I judging this guy for not wearing a mask? Like, you do what you want. I don't know.
It's difficult. I understand that, man. I mean, it happens to people. This is a problem I have with it all. Is that the more, if you actually research the actual methods they use to sell us their bullshit, the reason why Instagram's free and all these things are free for us to use as a service isn't because they're really kind and they just want us all to have a better life. It's because they've got a thing called mind mining, and they are seriously just watching our algorithms and learning who you are, what you are, and how to direct all of their bullshit information they think you're going to stay on your phone longer with. And there's some cool documentaries about it. That's the only reason I know anything about it.
Did you watch the one that was on Netflix recently?
Sadly,
the social
I am
dilemma.
watching a lot of this shit on Netflix, which is almost ironic. You know what I mean? It's like, where did you see that? Oh yeah, Netflix. Okay, all right.
It's all people from like the tech industry, isn't it? Who used to work like Google, Pinterest, Facebook, and they're talking about all these companies essentially are just like fighting for your attention. That's all they're doing all the time, and then it's like even little things when you're scrolling your phone, and then like something new pops up every time. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing.
I'm done with it, man.
If you think about the way you actually might have felt before phones, because I'm quite old, so not quite old, but I'm pushing like 44 years old. I'm thinking, well, I remember a time when there wasn't any phones, and I remember not feeling so impulsive about certain things, and I remember my emotions were far more stable, and I've always had my own issues with little mental health problems and stuff, but I remember being much more emotionally stable. And I feel like a lot of what's going on is because our subconscious mind is being launched upon with advertising campaigns. They're working out how to trigger off our subconscious mind to get us to start recognizing images, etc. And that can be triggering off other emotions in your subconscious mind. And I'm starting to feel a little bit like that might have a big load to do with why people are having so much mental health issues in this day and age.
Do you think in terms of like going on to what you've just said, right? In terms of, in a sense, sort of mind control through media and government and feeding you all this information and channeling it into to make you believe what they want you to be. Do you think it's always been this way? It's just been taken different forms, or do you think it's got
no? Of course,
it's got.
No, I think it's always been like that. Radio was the first transmission of that. You know what I mean? At one point in the late 70s or maybe in the 80s, I'm awful at like really re-quoting a good fact. You know what I mean? But somewhere in what I'm about to tell you is a fact. I'm gonna probably get some of it wrong, right? But the cinemas in England transmit advertisements years ago, and the connection was lost.
Hold on, man. Yeah, the connection's a little bit.
Are you there?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
still here, man. Yeah, just it was that 10
Sorry,
minutes. Make a note of that, Aidan, so we can like
go back on
edit that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
start again, man.
So back in the day, at some point, cinemas used to send subliminal messages in the films, like in what is it, the film where they put Natural Born Killers does it or something, doesn't it? Where they put little. And they used to send you advertisements telling you to buy ice cream and Coca-Cola in the break, because you used to get a break in halfway through a film in a cinema, and a woman used to come around with ice cream cones and Coca-Colas and stuff, and they would send you subliminal messages like this is on board, you know. And they made it illegal at some point in the late 70s or maybe early 80s for them to do that anymore. So even back then it was doing it. People like Paul McKenna, or what is his name, Paul McKenna, Terence McKenna, Paul McKenna. I went to one of his things, and he'd done all this subliminal planting of words in it, and I was there with him. He knew exactly what I was going to think out of a word on a newspaper and everything like it. And I tend to think that my mind's quite strong, but I'm lately learning through the internet that I'm a very vulnerable old man, you know. And I need some grandchildren to protect me on here, because chess gets played. I get played regularly.
We can be your surrogate grandchildren, man, if you want. Shotgun the Orbit will take care of you.
Help, man. I get cyberbullied. I fucking fall for all kinds of scams and.
Mate.
You know what I found out recently, right? And actually, no. I say recently, literally last night. So recently, I've been reading. I told you, Tom, Chester. I don't know if you know. Have you read Arcala's book?
Akala.
Right. No, I haven't read this book. No.
But basically, it goes through like the history of the sort of British Empire and touched a lot upon like racism. And I never knew this, but there was a thing called Operation Legacy. You might be familiar with it. And I think it happened between the. If I've got the years wrong, I'm sorry, but I think it happened between the 60s to the 70s, and it was basically when the English government had a massive campaign to basically destroy all of the history that linked the British Empire to like the slave trade, and all this sort of negative history. Like they destroyed all the sort of slave ships and kept all the the good ships or whatever, like the Mary Rose, whatever that shit is. And it just got me thinking a lot about how, you know, that there is so much that we don't know, and history that has been destroyed through, and the government has sort of been responsible for it, and it has sort of tailored our teaching, our sort of mindset going forward into sort of, you know, love my country and that sort of thing.
Well, nationalism in itself in this country is a very difficult thing to uphold if you've got any kind of moral compass, I guess, you know what I mean? But, you know, the people who wrote the history books have only wrote it as themselves being the heroes, you know what I mean? Like, you don't, you know, they're not writing themselves in as the villains they were. And of course, when empires are trying to take over the world, wherever they go, it only makes sense that they're going to destroy any historical relics of their culture so that they can pretend that they were the first thing that came, because dominance is found in that entitlement. We were first, you know, like, and that's how they are, these empirical people. But at some point, all of this has got to burn itself to the root as well. You know, it's like, it's beautiful that everyone's going to fight and everyone's got their moral direction in the right place at the moment. But these things are all going to come about on their selves. You know, these things will eat themselves in the end, because none of it is structured on anything of the essence of life. But that's what humanity is developing into realizing now, is that a lot of what we have structured all of us on everything we believe, the financial systems. It's all very well that we want to fight down this and we want to fight down that, but, you know, the monetary system is the first thing that has to go if we want to be real. And then where are we? And what have we got? And all we have after that is a blank page filled with people's fear and projection of what could come after lawlessness, you know what I mean? And that's a rational thought. So for me, it's like, it's only a matter of time that before everything starts collapsing on itself, because it's a sandcastle, you know what I mean? The ocean's coming in.
Do you think it would happen in our lifetime?
No,
I don't know. I think it's beginning to happen. I mean, look, as far as conspiracies and all that kind of stuff, like, people find it hard to say that they've talked about conspiracy theories, but if we're talking about a bunch of people conspiring and we don't know whether that's true or not, and we're having that discussion, then you're having a discussion about a conspiracy theory, right? That's just logical, right? There's no harm in admitting that. When I was young, growing up in the very early 90s, I got lost in that rabbit hole badly, you know, and I've always had certain substance problems, and I was abusing my mind with certain things, psychedelic things, especially at that point in time. And I got very, very lost in this like rabbit hole of different ideas. And my only conclusion at the end of it that managed to get myself out of it was that these are questions that are never going to have an answer. And if you can't answer a question, you've got to stop asking the question, because all you're going to do is make yourself ill. And some things we are not meant to know, you know, and we're not meant to try and fight for. We are just meant to deal with what is in our reach, and that I can reach my arms out, grab hold of and touch. If I walk down the street and I see some kind of injustice, I will defend whoever is having that injustice put upon them, no matter what creed, color, sex, sexuality, anything. If I see something and I feel like I can help a person, I will be the first person there to help that person. I ain't going online to talk about that too tough. I ain't going on Instagram to say, man, we got to do this and we got to do that, and then just sit at home and watch the news while other people
that's a really good point, man.
Revolutions have consisted of a rich man's theory covered in poor people's blood. And I'm not trying to fight these fights no more, you know, like, I understand what to do when I see a morality in front of me. There's no human being who can come and tell me I don't have morality. I don't care if they think I haven't. I know me. And if I'm out and about and I see any kind of badness going on, I will help anyone I can. But in terms of having to follow all these like restrictions and regulations online to prove you're one thing or another, like, I can't personally be a part of that, because if I haven't already proven that, I've been talking about these things from fucking decades ago, you know. I ain't really got the time to have to prove myself anymore. I'm an old guy, you know, like, I've done proving, and anyone who knows me in the real world will know that I will stand up for anybody, anytime, you know. And that's what I think is the real fight in all of us, is we have to remember that it's like any situation I go into, there's boxes that people tick, and then there's the reality behind those boxes. And I try to live in that reality, not be the guy ticking the box. I don't care if my boxes are unticked. I deal with the real fact that I will do what I have to do to help anybody who needs my help, if I have it in my power to help that person. I have the freedom to evaluate a situation and decide, no, I'm not putting my own freedom at risk. Why am I going to do that? But you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know what I think? You know, you touched upon it earlier with the whole social media thing. Yeah. Do you know what I think it boils down to is that people who virtue signal, social justice warriors, as you referred to them as, I think it's the easiest thing a person can do without actually doing anything tangible. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like with microaggressions, all of this stuff is like, I'm making a difference, when in fact you're not really contributing to anything. You're just shouting into an echo chamber. There's a difference between like raising something and as a discussion, because there are obviously valid discussions to be had. But to your point, when you get buried in semantics, and it's kind of like people are more focused on, you're on the same side, but people are more focused on the fact that you're not doing it the same way as them. And they're going to kind of massage your ego and tell you that you're right, when in reality,
and that's what happens. Or they line you up with the people who disagree. Whatever's going to keep you on your phone longer, You know, if they think you're going to spend all night arguing with some twit because he disagrees with you, and every time he says, "Oh, you dickhead," you're going to spend another hour thinking about that, and then sending a thing that they will send people like they will send robots like that to you, even by the looks of it. You know what I mean? It's a mad world, man.
Yeah, man. It's even weirder when you're like invested in reading two people argue it, and you know, an argument between two people you don't know.
Oh,
You're not even
yeah.
actively involved in it. It's just like the ultimate waste of time, man.
It's just what the fuck is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, your fucking mum and your mum, and he's like, "Oh, you mad?" Like, fucking insane. I thought I were, bro. Jesus.
Oh man.
Wow.
So let's get into some music, man. Because I know obviously like you released a Nameless Project last year. We'll go into that in a little while, and you've got some new stuff in the pipeline. But before we get into that, I mean, a lot of people will probably be tuning in to, you know, find out what the deal is with like Task Force and where you are with that right now. Is that a chapter that's kind of closed? What's
I mean, well, Farms is my brother, so that's it. We're family. You know what I mean? You can't really change that. We probably would if we could, but we can't. It's all love, man. But there's not going to be more Task Force. There's not going to be any more Task Force. I know my brother's doing what he's doing. He's producing things for all kinds of American artists and stuff, and I'll just be getting on doing with what I'm doing. But the Task Force, you know, like it's when we were doing it, we were most of the time living together. We were doing the same things to get money to eat together. We were spending our time together. We were, you know, everything was together. We grew up together, and everything that we encapsulated was real for that moment in time, and it was very special. And that's why it meant something to so many people. Either hate it, love it, whatever, but it's never a middle of the road. But it's these extremes we keep finding, you know what I mean? But for me and my brother, it was at that point in time, everything what we were talking about and thinking about, it kind of reflected the reality of everything that was happening around us in our lives, and trying to reinvent that now at this present moment in time, it wouldn't be authentic. So we decided, you know, there's a lot to ruin with just the idea of perhaps like fascinating a few people, but not really having it in us to pull it off as a unit. You know what I mean? Because we're not unified no more. We're brothers and we love each other. That's fine. There's no bad blood at all. But we're not we're not a unit. We're like, he's him, I'm me, and we're just doing our own things. We don't talk. It's fine. It's all love and peace, man. But that's why we decided at the end of the day, you know, so you know, we called it a day after the last bunch of merchandise or whatever got sold. It was just time to say, you know, it's been a good run. Let's just call it a day. Let's get on with getting on, because nothing lasts forever. So I figure we better love Task Force forever for now.
Yeah, man, I respect that.
On a high and legendary status, man. I mean, actually, funny story about it. You know, the first time I heard of Task Force was when I first got into UK hip hop. And back then, I don't know why I felt like a little bit sort of righteous, and I thought, you know what, I'm only going to listen to sort of new. I'm only going to listen to old school hip hop groups, but I'm only going to listen to them on vinyl first. So I'm fuck off with this YouTube thing. I'm going to get all on vinyl. So I went on eBay and ordered a Task Force vinyl, and it arrived, and I put it on, and it turned out it was like some German band. I think, what is this? Have I got something wrong here? Obviously, there's another Task Force out. Obviously, it's probably out there. But yeah, that was my introduction into Task Force, and then I found a bit different. Some of the bit different. It's very good UK.
Oh man, I mean, like your discography is now kind of. I mean, obviously, secondhand information. What we've been told is that it's kind of available on digital platforms now on your own terms after like kind of a long process with you know, a certain brain tax. So
was it uploaded last? Was it?
That's just water under a bridge to me, man. Good. I mean, when I look at that now, everyone's had their own situation and their own relationship. So I can only speak from my personal experiences with a person, you know, and everyone else has got theirs. And to me, it's just water under a bridge now. It just doesn't matter. I had I have more good things out of that situation than I've ever had negative things. So in some respects, I should probably say thank you to Brain Tax. But on the other hand, I know he's done some things to people who I love very dearly that I can't be thankful for, you know what I mean? So it's one of those contradictory, it's a conflict of interest, as they say in work areas. But yeah, I ain't got any hard feelings, man. You know, like I literally, I'm just trying to get on with all of that. It was a good era of hip hop, and we should not necessarily tarnish with the negative side of it, which was that. But me personally, I don't feel like I lost as much as other people, so it's easier for me to say that. You know,
yeah, man.
Man.
When you say about you know, there was a lot of incredible UK hip hop back then, and I think it's obviously kind of a shame that, you know, technology's moved on now, and you know, there's a bigger platform for people to get their music heard. But I was listening to, like, you know, the £10 bag mixtapes from Louis Singers, and just so many incredible artists on there. So many kind of seminal tracks, and you just think, like, kids need to hear this. Do you know what I mean? I know that's kind of just from an old head saying that, and that's kind of always going to be a thing that, you know, people try to push on the youngsters. But it's just like, you came from such a, I don't know, it's just like the best generation of UK hip hop, man.
I think it depends what generation you're looking at it from, because to me, like, there was already British hip hop before I was a British hip hop artist. You know, before people had ever heard of who I was already listening to Demon Boys, London Posse, Son and Noise, Catch-22. I was all Gunshot, all of these guys, Brotherhood. You know, like, we were already listening to them. 1989 Hustlers Convention album and stuff like that. Daddy Freddy, you know, MC Duke, and African Bambaataa, not African Bambaataa. Sorry, what's his name? Overlord X. I don't know why I got the two confused. No disrespect, Overlord X, sorry. But yeah, you know, all them days there was already British hip hop. MCD, Black Twang was already out. You know, I used to go and buy Black Twang records before before anyone really knew who I was. I'd been in a few battles. People were starting to get to know me as Angel Face Terror at that point. I was buying Black Twang records, Queen's Heads, all that stuff, man. I was out there buying it on a regular every weekend. I was a big fan of British hip hop. So it was already there. And to me, that was the best generation, because that's the generation that inspired me. You know what I mean? So it is reflective of that. And as we grow and we get older, it's hard to ever let go of that. But we have to allow the younger generations to be able to make their own free will decisions to work out what it is they're into, because it don't sound like hip hop as we might recognize it. It doesn't mean to say they can't have it as what they recognize it. And to be honest, I don't even really care anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
I don't care I don't care if you put Freddie Mercury on and tell me it's hip hop anymore. I just don't care. You know, I mean, these are just boxes that people are ticking. To me, it's like, I can't take anything that seriously anymore, because it's just not that serious. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, the movement itself isn't doing anything productive enough for me to take it as a serious kind of movement. Like, it's just, you know, like, I'm as guilty of that as anyone else. You know, I hope people can understand that. It's just, I don't feel like, you know, it's just like the Loonin' Raver tick. Loony, what is it? The Loony
Raving Lunatic?
Raving Lunatic Party. That's kind of, you know, that's like that. That's how kind of hip hop's feeling, man. There's some actually great stuff out there coming out, but I don't know. I watch you guys things sometimes when you're posting up rappers throughout lockdown, and I was just finding bare rappers. I was thinking, right, enough of these rappers are well good. Like, I'm getting interested and thinking, okay, this is cool, man. You know, particularly Barbarian. A very, very talented young man, you know what I mean? Like, mind blowing, really. And that's how I made contact with CFAX and Converse and and these are good people, man.
Yeah, good guys, man.
So, yeah, so, you know, even in the current climate, like, there are still people coming up with that vibration, that same sound that we're accustomed to, and then there are people who are going to do something that's trying to sound new and sounds like this 2020 Philip K. Dickens kind of fucking crazy sci-fi world we live in. Like, I expect to turn on the radio and it's just some, yeah, I'm sitting on the block getting done with my mask on. see my girl go, I get hard on. Yeah, that's how we
I think music like that already exists, mate.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. We're living in a funny time, and to me, creativity isn't something that we can contain to one genre. It's like if a person wants to do whatever they want to do, it don't matter. And I'm almost sort of like, not cynically glad, but I'm almost sort of glad that all this shit's going to take the financial aspect out of music again. And some of us are going to have to sit and think, well, why do I do this? I'm not going to do it no more. I'm not making no money. I'm gone. And I'm just going to be sitting there thinking, well, I'll always be here chipping away at my little pen and pad. You know what I mean? I don't care if no one ever hears it. It's just therapy. It's life. It's creativity. And it can't be boxed, and it can't be put in a genre. And I'll do whatever I want, to be honest. And if someone goes, that ain't hip-hop, Chess ain't hip-hop, I say, cool, that's fine. I mean,
people do get pressures about it, don't they?
Chester's not hip-hop. That's fine, man. I will live with that. I'm bipolar anyway, so it's cool. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. When you first started out with Task Force back in the day, like, was there ever like a light bulb moment when you realised that you were kind of laying a foundation for future generations of UK hip hop artists, and kind of how kind of seminal your music would be? Not
kind of, and not at the same time. There was always a feeling of knowing that what we were doing, it was meant to be happening. There was no resistance from the universe as such, you know what I mean? And, you know, I'd be in Glastonbury, I might have a very young Jest coming up to me and rapping and being like, blah, 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 and spitting his bars. And then a few years later, he's on our track just tearing the fuck out of everyone. And you're like, okay, so I can sort of see how this thing's turning around, you know. And I think I might have heard Allen Ginsberg talk about Bob Dylan in a similar way, where it's like he heard Bob's kind of poetry and was like, okay, there's a time when a poet realizes I'm going to sit down and let the next generation stand up with a torch and say, boom, this is the new wave of thinking, but we've been inspired by your ways of thinking. And then you can sit and really enjoy that, because it can be done in a respectful way where, you know, it's just a circle of creativity. To me, that's the most pleasant part about being creative, you know what I mean, is when it's done in that respectful way, you know. Like, so I kind of got the impression that there was things happening. People would say stuff, and, you know, you go anywhere in the world and someone's going to bump into you and recognize you, and you're like, oh Jesus, this is weird, like. And all the while, you're just broke, and you're thinking, no, this is a confusing situation, to be honest. But I always enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Outside of rap, what artists, outside of rap, hip hop, what sort of artists do you really rate?
I mean, I don't listen to modern music. I have no idea about any modern music. I've literally no idea. I listen to everything and anything. I mean, I have playlists of world music that are like 9 hours long on Spotify, and there's no English in there. It's just any music. I listen to anything, literally. But in terms of artists, like if I was going to get fanned out by people, Bob Dylan would be high up on the list for me as one of my kind of heroes, not just because of his music, because at a certain point in time I just cut off and didn't listen to him anymore. And, you know, it's only for selective moments. And I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but just his personality and how he kept it real with the media and he didn't buy into any of that bullshit, you know. And I respect him a great deal. But there's loads of artists from back then. There's like Bert Jansch, John Renbourn, a lot of the old Scottish folk movement, Davy Graham.
Okay.
Lots and lots and lots and lots of old, you know. So we grew up, my mum and dad are musicians, so we grew up around music.
Pete Coombs, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was in the Tourists and stuff. But my mum was like not a recording artist, but she is a folk singer and guitarist. But so they had a big record collection. But, you know, they would have Bach down to Mississippi John Hurt, and, you know, like everything in between. So we would grow up just listening to all of this different music. And that's obviously had a big influence on us. So when it comes around to producing tracks and stuff, all producers who start digging, they're going to broaden their horizon of music, you know. And for me, it was just a natural kind of evolution to say, well, I don't want to just keep sampling music. I want to play some of this music now, you know. Like I'm getting, you know, it's like sampling's an art form in itself. I'm not going to sit here and knock that. You know, it's an amazing art form. People who can do it well can do it well. But playing an instrument is also an art form, you know, and there's something very independent about that and freeing, and it can change as long as you can allow your mindset not to convince yourself that you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that because I'm a hip hop artist. And it's just like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? You're a person above all else. You know, hip hop's music. It's like football. You know, like I've never been able to relate to this kind of like, that's my team, and I'll go. I just like, right.
How'd you own it? Yeah, you didn't really do shit. You just kind of
Jesus. And no disrespect to anyone who has that kind of enthusiasm. I'm kind of jealous. I think that I have no enthusiasm for anything in life as much as football fans have for footballers. There ain't nothing in the world that makes me that excited. I mean, it's hard to see excitement in my eyes, man. And I see these guys getting excited, boy. It's like, raw. I mean, back in the late 80s, maybe very early 90s, the old Arsenal stadium, there was a fella there who used to run the doors called Patrick, or Paddy, our old man. And we all used to get our first E's back then. And he would let you in at half time. And we were like 13, 14 years old or whatever. We'd pop our E's and we'd just go into football. And I'm not a football fan, but when everyone scores a goal and you're in the Arsenal, so, and you're like, gurning away. It was an experience, man. It was like, cool, you know, that's the way to take a pill. Right?
Yeah, just don't stand in the wrong side.
You make sure you're in the Arsenal side.
Yeah. Oh mate, that's amazing. But I mean, like, coming from, I guess, like, lack of a better term, like the analog generation of UK hip hop, like not pre-internet, but like pre-social media. Have you? I suppose you've already kind of like alluded to the fact that you do your own thing anyway. But have you had to kind of adapt in a way, like how you release music based on the way people digest it?
Yeah, well, you have to. I mean, to be honest, I just haven't adapted, so I haven't really been, you know, I mean, even putting any effort into selling music. It's kind of just like, here it is. If you want to go and have it. I don't even understand that any of this stuff even works. Like, go and listen to it on Spotify, or go wherever you want. I'd rather you just bought it off me. But people doing what they're doing these days, you know, it's just the way it is. So I haven't really adapted because I'm not even trying to understand all of that stuff, and I don't feel like, you know, I don't even have the energy to put into it that much, you know what I mean? What the music I'm going to currently be making is something I'm going to put some energy into. The last couple of projects I haven't really been able to finish and get done properly, and it's just like it's been a bit of a saga, you know. I've wanted to do it, but there's been some lackluster going on because I've had my head in a different place, and you know, it's like,
are you referring to the Nameless Project and Post-Apocalyptic Storyteller?
I love both of those projects. I had a really hard time trying to finish the Post-Apocalyptic Storyteller, and my problem with it is that I know I could have made it a lot better by just focusing on the finished product, and I couldn't at the time because my mind was just going and going and going, and I just had to. It was causing me mental health issues having it just sat around, you know, and like everything was going bad in my life, and I just had to get it out. And I got it out, and it weren't as finished as it should have, and I should have put a little bit of pizzazz on it, or as they say on Netflix, shush it up.
I've got to say though, man, that like Hands Up track, the bonus track you had on the Post-Apocalyptic Storyteller, and the video you dropped for that, I fucking love that, man.
Yeah,
just like an ode to fakeness.
Yeah.
it's just incredible.
It's a good chat. It's a good chat.
So with the Nameless project that came out, it was kind of really like unique in terms of like the beats were a lot more kind of unconventional, or like different to what I'm used to you spitting over, and that was and featured DJ, is it Compose? Was he just on the cuts, or was he producing it? Or was it
I produced it all. He was doing the scratching on it all, and like the mix and master was done by my DJ JCA. I was just producing that, you know. To be honest, I was just like, waking up at 3 a.m. and just putting headphones on, and just like they were the sounds that were coming out, and I don't know why it was just appealing to me at the time, and it's very unconventional.
But then
I like doing that. You know what I mean? To me, it's just like there's no genre to it. It's kind of just what it is.
And I like the way the tracks kind of thematically like transition into one another with references and stuff. Like,
it's a story.
Dead Canaries goes into Gas Mask, and
but even deeper than that, because it starts off and I go through it, and I'm just going through kind of normal Chester P-isms, and then we get to an LSD stage.
Yeah.
And there's an LSD skit, and then it goes into cocaine, and the music sort of changes into a more cocaine mechanical kind of vibration. And then
Charlie Sheen.
Exactly. And then after that comes the LSD actually, and then we go into that kind of sci-fi world where everything goes a bit like whoa. So there was a little theme to it, but a part of that theme is a bit of a blag as well. And you know, I'm an honest enough person to tell anyone that. I'll be real with it. I enjoyed making that, you know. For me, I felt that there was some strong wordplay on there, and I know that the beats weren't going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's why I just wanted to call it that. You know what I mean? Just because, like, I don't want to be anyone's cup of tea anyway. You know, like I don't.
And why should you, man?
I am currently working with DJ Goblin, and me and him are cooking up something that I know that people are going to be it's going to appeal to people. It's going to be a more traditional sort of sounding hip hop kind of. Well, you know what his beats sound like already, so it's like we're getting there now. We've got quite a lot of tracks recorded, but I'm going to keep going. So it's not going to be this year, but that's going to come out on vinyl, CD or whatever people buy. I don't know, like cassette, toast, anything. I don't care. You can stick it in your toaster, whatever. However you eat music these days, man. But
what a time to be alive.
I've seen videos, man, of you, or videos on YouTube of you playing live, and the audience is just going absolutely mental.
That's what shows.
What did it feel like, you know, back then or whenever, like playing to live audiences? Was there any sort of mad events that came from you playing those shows, or after parties or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of crazy ones. We support Super Furry Animals were fans of Task Force. Like,
what?
Yeah, and they
Welsh
you know,
band,
they were
Welsh,
yeah, massive band, but Welsh band, and they were really big fans, and they asked us to do their support act at the flipping Cardiff Arena. Okay. So we get there about 2 minutes late, and they're kicking up a bit. Not them, but the stage managers are giving us all kinds of grief. We come on stage, and they introduce us. This is some people we think are wonderful. It's Task Force, and there's just nothing. Pin drop, you know. And we're like, has anyone out there heard of us? And nah, there's like 10, 15,000 people out there, and you're like, okay, so I've got 45 minutes of this, okay. You know, and you know what you have to do at that point is realize you have to drop the ego and say to yourself, you know what, the music's not going to matter. I need to sell them my personality right now, you know what I mean? And start like having some banter with these guys, and we did good. And by doing things like that, you learn when you're in front of your own crowd. If you know you can hold a 10,000 audience without getting shit thrown at you, and none of them want you there, you know when you're in front of your own crowd, you're doing all right. It is good. So there were a lot of hairy moments. I mean, to be honest, over the years, I've seen all kinds of things, doing gigs and after gigs, and you know, like. But gossip is a thing that always comes back around and bites you in the ass.
Real talk, man. Real talk.
Yeah, I've done enough to be gossiped about, so I tend not to gossip. You know?
I would imagine, right? Can it be more nerve-wracking playing to like a smaller audience? Because with a smaller audience, like you can literally like see all their faces, and you can hear any comments that come across, or whether shouts.
The intimacy is always daunting, but at the same time, it's one of them things. Like in all my life, it's one of the only places I've ever felt comfortable, you know, on a stage. Like more than a studio, more than any other environment, on a stage. Something just goes pop, and then I am completely a transformation of my normal kind of character. And anyone who knows me really well is just like, what is this transition that goes on? Like, why aren't you always that person? You're so much more fun. That's a performance, you know what I mean? But it's just one of them things. I've always I love connecting with people, you know, like whether people agree or not, I just like being honest with people and knowing that anyone else understanding that frequency of honesty knows that it don't matter about the agreement. It just matters that we all understand that we're saying something that's true to us, you know, so we can accept that. And when you have that relationship with a crowd or an audience or people who followed your music and throughout your music, you've been honest, and there's at no point in time can someone actually pull you up and say, you're not this, you are everything that you've been saying you are all this time. When you have that relationship and you've conducted that kind of atmosphere, you can create something very special. And that's what all performers who have that kind of vibration live, that's what they've managed to concoct, is like this magical kind of potion with people where people trust them, and it stops being like fan and music and it just starts being family, you know, and everyone just wants to vibrate on that frequency, and it becomes a very good energy. On the other hand, you can see different shows where you get people whose music's so fucking cherished and worshipped, but when they're performing, they've got a really bad attitude with it, and people kind of like, oh, you know what I mean, because they separate themselves as pedestals or giant psilocybins to sit on, or whatever it is these people are sitting on, you know what I mean? But that's what it is for me, is just having an honest relationship with the people who are tuning into what it is I'm transmitting, you know what I mean? Not STD wise, but
yeah, man, I hear that. But I mean, you play some like iconic like hip hop events back in the day, like Kung Fu, the whole like Chester P for Mayor stuff, and I was saying, we talked about on the podcast ages ago. You did a documentary on Netflix, Chester P for Mayor, like hip hop and homelessness, and
not on Netflix, is it?
No, it's not.
Netflix.
It's on YouTube, man. Did I say Netflix?
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
It's on...
yeah, it's
no
definitely not on Netflix. It's on YouTube.
Who? How?
And
yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, man, that was really kind of humbling. What you did there, like selling your T-shirts and everything else. And is that something you're still kind of actively involved in? I know you mentioned earlier, when you see someone who needs help, who's vulnerable, you do the right thing, you protect them. Is that, obviously you live your life that way, but are you still actively doing stuff like that at the moment?
Not directly with homeless people, but it depends how we measure that up. What I was doing then is I was using my audience to raise money to buy things for homeless people. So it becomes this paradox where I then have to constantly go online and show everyone what I'm spending their money on, and I become this sort of thing in my own mind where it's like, I'm not really comfortable with this. I have to take a photo of a man when I'm giving him a pair of socks rather than just giving him a pair of socks. So slowly but surely I had to wind it out of getting donations, because I didn't want to have to keep accounting for the donations as such, not just that, it was fucking exhausting. I'll be absolutely frank. I was spending like 5 or 6 days or nights out there a week, and I was in situations, all kinds of messed up situations with young, vulnerable people, and all horrible. And I weren't really equipped to deal with it. And certain relationships went a bit sour with people I was working with who are still doing what they were doing, and they're wonderful people for doing that. And, but me personally, I had to come away from doing it in that sense, whereas I was kind of taking money off anyone else. But anytime I go out anywhere, I mean, I live over the road to a halfway house from people with mental health problems and substance problems, and all of them know who I am, and we all have our chats, and they all get their tin of pop, and can I have some money, Joe? Yeah, how much do you need, bro? Oh, I need 70p. What are you going to buy, bro? I'm going to buy a Boost. Oh, yeah, and some chocolate and that. All right, Brian. You know what I mean? You do that kind of thing, and then you're not meant to talk about it, apparently, but I just broke that rule, so there you go. But what I chose to do in my mind is like self-preservation is important. Yeah. Wow. But it was a great documentary, but a lot of the credit for that should really go to Greg Hall, who directed it. who'd done a marvelous job and done all the research and had, you know, organized all the places we went and filmed. It was all that was all his legwork. I was just the character, you know what I mean? Like I was just being put in the spot and reacting the way I do, but he organized all of that, and then all of the camera people and everyone who was involved with the sound and the editing of it all, because not one person, including myself, got a penny out of any of that. It was completely a labor of love, and everything that was raised got spent on stuff that went back into the street and was given to homeless people. It was a beautiful thing. And recently, after the bike situation, after a bike was stolen at my house or whatever, at my garden, and to see people, it was a similar sort of thing, you know what I mean, where people kind of chip into it, and it felt nice because I'd kind of lost faith in a lot. So it was a very touching moment. But for the homeless documentary, definitely all the credit I would give to Greg Hall and the guys behind cameras and doing all the sound work and the editing, because that's proper hard work, you know, hard work.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, back to the music, man, and obviously just kind of by default who you are, like, you're still an ambassador for the kind of UK hip hop just by being Chester P. Is there any kind of like advice you would give to any like young up and coming artists who devote their life to this craft?
I feel like the only real sensible advice I'd ever give anyone is the only advice I would take myself, and that's try not to really deal with people's advice too tough, because an antelope can't tell a lion how to live its life, no matter how good the antelope's life is, because a lion's a lion, and if it starts behaving like an antelope, something's going to fuck with it, you know what I mean? So really and truly, you are where you're meant to be, and be where you are, and just be there and be who you are, because it's your light that the universe needs you to shine in that present moment in time, and anyone else trying to misguide you from what you are naturally being hasn't got the wisdom to give you any real good advice, because we shouldn't really have advice for people. But I understand the question on a less philosophical level, and you know, in music in this day and age, the young guys would have to give me advice because I don't know nothing about all this stuff, this computer stuff and these rhythms and logs and algos, and to me, I'm lost in a pond. I know about algae. I don't know about algorithms. I know about algae rhythm.
Man, honestly, just like...
So I need advice of the young ones. All you young ones, what do you tell an old caveman like me, you know? But really, truly, I genuinely believe, you know, if we all just had more faith in ourselves and didn't seek for governance from anyone else, we probably wouldn't be in the mess that we're in with the governments of the world that we have controlling us. And I don't have heroes, you know, and sometimes I feel like I've been put on pedestals just so when people get bitter at me, they can kick it from under my feet and go, you're not as righteous as you said you were. And it's like, I didn't say I was righteous. I'm not righteous or wrongous. I'm justous.
Man, honestly, like, it's just, I think, like, summing up, having that time away from socials and kind of clearing your mind, and it can only be a good thing, right? It all kind of circles back to that kind of toxic environment that we all kind of indulge in every day.
Yeah.
And it's a habit. It's a force of habit. You wake up, you grab something, you scroll. It's just like, this isn't...
Yeah, it's bad, man. It's
too much information. Yeah.
Do you think now, to an extent, that like music is sort of, rather than everything going around music is sort of now going around social platforms?
Absolutely.
Like it does, it's very true. Like, you know, it does sort of depend on your social following. I've seen people now, like influencers. Well, I don't know if you call them an influencer, but many people with a big following that sort of just think like, do you know what? I'm going to give music a go, and then use their following just to bounce their sort of music. And fair enough, if you want to do that, you want to do that. But it's strange how now it's become sort of.
I think that's what makes you popular.
Yeah, it's become like sort of a thing like, I need some money, I'm going to jump on this music thing to make some money. And it's come, rather than, you know, an expression of emotion or whatever, or an outlet, it's become more of a, well, I suppose it's always been a sense, and it goes back to what I said earlier, it's the same sort of thing has always been the case. It's just in different formats, isn't it? In different...
Kind of, yeah. No, I think even going back to what we would consider our golden era and stuff of people our generation, or that era of the 90s hip hop that we like the sound of, or what have you, even at that point in time, there was god awful hip hop coming out. You know what I mean? Some of it was god awful, you know. And there was people doing what we call selling out, and there was people doing this and doing that. And they at the end of the day, all music's done it. But you see, it's like culture starts with the occult. You know what I mean? It comes from a very, very underground place, and all music's done it. Rock and roll did it. The transition from it being something that poor black people were singing and playing the music, the blues, transitioning into rock, into electric blues, blah blah blah, up into your Eric Claptons, who are a complete racist, playing a whole flipping black music. You know, I mean, that confusion to me, these misappropriations are something that I've always found complicated to deal with in hip hop. You know, it's like, I don't know, you know, it's something we should be aware of, all of us, really, of everything that is happening socially around us. But because music now is not accessed the same way, and it's only like die-hard kind of old school people who are buying records and stuff, which is definitely coming back to life, that whole record thing, which is a business I understand a bit better, because to me that's like hand to hand. I've got a product in my hand, you've got money in yours, let's exchange. I get that. All of this digital stuff where this company gets this split and this gets that and I get 1%, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, right, this ain't really working for me. You know, it's like, it's just a crazy time in general. But that's just it is the nature of things. And sometimes, to me, I find like a human trait is feeling like we have a say in any of the nature of things, you know what I mean? And maybe it's just best left alone and let it be what it is, because I am me, you know. So if something isn't the way I want it to be, then I will just not be it, and I will just be the person I am. But that can still exist and coexist with who I am. And the minute that stops being able to happen is when these extremes I keep talking about start clashing, and we start getting into the trouble we're in. But I do believe social media is ruining more than just the music. It's ruining people's attention spans. So people are making music that you don't need to be having any attention for. So I used to say, you know, nothing in life's free, pay attention. But they're not even paying attention anymore. It's just a free ride now. They're joyriding.
Well, I would say off the back of that, I think from what I've seen in music, I feel like it's more people just putting out singles rather than taking the time to craft like full albums. Going back to what you've just said, it's that sort of attention thing. And I mean, we're all guilty of it. Everyone loves a playlist because of the variation, but music is now, to an extent, a lot of music is made for playlists rather than for the craft of a whole project.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to sit and look at something physically and say that's a piece of art, you know, it's somebody's expression of something. And the more and more we cater for the other side of it, the more and more the content of what people are talking about and the sound has to also cater for the people who are going to buy into that. And that's where we start turning that old blues music that poor black people were playing, into Eric Clapton. That's what we're starting to see happen. And this is a misappropriation. And I think in 2020, especially as white people who listen to hip hop music, we could probably address that as something that's more important than a lot of the racial stuff we've been seeing going on in some respects, because it's something that is actually happening all the time. And maybe, you know, I feel very slightly responsible for that to a certain extent in some areas, because when we first came, it weren't like that, you know what I mean? And it really wasn't. And I feel like that's why grime and that sort of music doesn't want to associate itself with what we call British hip hop, because they're looking at us thinking, I don't identify with you, and I can identify with that, you know what I mean? Because I can see where they're coming from, you know? And I feel like that's the truth, you know?
Yeah, no, I've never thought about it like that, actually. That's super interesting.
They can't identify with it, you know. We are seeing the misappropriation. That's what is being mirrored back, and it makes a lot of sense to me. You know what I mean? It really does. It's hard to talk on, because who am I to talk on it? You know what I mean? It's, at the end of the day, I am aware of these things.
Off the back of what you were just saying, do you think that's part of the reason like grime's just sort of like taken off in popularity and hip hop has in a sense gone up and then but just sort of stayed like plateaued slightly?
I think the demographics of music, I think grime comes from the street originally, and slowly but surely that's starting to take the same route as hip hop did. And I'm not condemning either direction, but I think it's a fair observation. And I think the demographic of the street compared to what white British hip hop is, the gap is like, it's like talking to Boris Johnson to some people, you know what I mean? The gap is too vast. This is way too upper middle class and this is way too lower class if we're going to put people into class division. I don't like to do that because a person's class isn't symbolized by how much money they got or where they live. It's symbolized by how you treat your fellow human and how you treat your own existence and the planet that you're living on. But we all have different ideas about that. But just the demographics of where these musics have come from, I think it's a fair observation to think, well, that's why they've never really wanted to associate, because when they look at that and say, well, we're trying to say, well, your music's come from hip hop, and then they look at us all standing there like, nah, man, my music's not come from you, you're white people. And that's a fair enough thing for people to think, and that's how I've always perceived it myself, you know. And I think there's probably some truth in that. And I'm glad that's the way it went, because I feel like that energy from the street, it needs a fucking outlet, and the outlet it once had has been compromised by something that it recognizes as its enemy, and that, you know, there's some psychology, and that's misappropriation. You know?
And it's something I guess like we're all like guilty of. Without even necessarily realizing it, you know.
Yes, the thing is, I'm not trying to carry around guilt for anything I have never consciously been a part of, you know what I mean? But we have to be aware of the generalized movement, and we are a part of that generalized movement. And the only way to continue moving is by being aware. Otherwise, then you do become a guilty party because you're naively being a part of something. But you know, it depends who and how we're going to talk about it. Because that's the kind of person I am. Then it's important for me to think like that. If somebody don't give a fuck, then it's their prerogative not to give a fuck. You know, it's never the twain shall meet. You know?
Real talk, man. So going forward with your upcoming project with DJ Goblin, when obviously don't have to tell us, but is that dropping kind of imminently, or is there still?
Nah, we got work to do. I mean, I'm definitely going in to record the vocals in the studio and get it all mixed. And I wanted the quality of that's going to be like from the ashes. So it's something I'm really standing up with. You know what I mean? And I don't know where I'll go. In my mind, I've never got a plan, but I know when me and him started connecting, and it, you know, one thing led to another, and you know, it's starting off all right. We've got the building blocks, and then slowly but surely we're starting to sit on some songs, and it's like, okay, this is good. What I need to do is not rush it and not do what we are seeing this generation of music doing, where it's like, shit, I've got a song, let me throw it online, boom, 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 let me spit my verse, let me do this, and just like, you know. And the reason labels do that though is so that they can check their algorithms and see their artists, and they will put out 10 singles from one artist and see which of them is doing the best, and then put them tracks on an album and then sell that as an album. It's like you were saying, you know, Aidan, it's the nonsense in it all. But because obviously we're underground and independent, for me, like, it's always been confusing why any of us are trying to even really fit in with something that's mainstream. We ain't, you know, we're never going to be. Like, what we're doing belongs here. It needs to stay here. It's important, you know, like everything else, all the glitz and the glamour. Some people want it for that. Some people want to be on TV. Some people want to be in magazines. Some people want to just get the kicks of going and partying and stuff. But there is another importance behind it all, you know, and there's a philosophy behind music that I feel like British hip hop and graffiti has tried to carry as a philosophy, you know, and I'm always going to carry that torch. This is not about money. This is about expression, and it's about expressing ourselves in a current climate is so important. And if we all conform to this plasticky, horrible, repetitive sound, we're getting no release. All of this tension, this whole lockdown, mockdown, whatever it is everyone's thinking about, all of that tension needs to get released, and we have no outlet for it because we're all going, look at my nice Gucci's, look at my bitches, and I mean,
I think there's always been like a yin to the yang, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in that sense,
Yeah.
like, you've got the commercial music, which is kind of like a vibe to some people, and some people just want escapism. Do you know what I mean? They want to listen to something that's a bit more superficial, and they're just like, right, I can't relate to it, but it sounds, but it slaps, so I'll listen to it. Versus people who, so I think there's a. Do you know what I mean? There's kind of a place for it all, but it's just it's relative to your own kind of taste and perspectives and mood. Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
And that's why we should never, ever try and discipline what people have the freedom to do creatively, because they're expressing the mood they're in. Happy music for me, because I'm a very melancholy flower, just goes over my head. It has no resonance with me. It has no place in my structure of life. For me to walk down the street with headphones on, listening to "I'm So Happy" would just drive me fucking insane, to be honest. You know what I mean? I need to hear something a bit more melancholy. That's why I've always liked folk music and stuff. It's always very melancholic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
British
man.
folk music.
Yeah, man. You're a fan of Bob Dylan, so did you ever listen to a singer called Karen Dalton? Because I think you probably like her. She was around during the kind of Bob Dylan time. She's American. She did quite a lot of folk covers, and then she just kind of disappeared into obscurity, really.
I think I do know. You mean, does she do a song called "Rainy Days" or something like that?
Possibly. She does one called "Something on Your Mind" and "Are You Leaving for the Country?" It's fucking incredible, man. If you're into Bob Dylan, yeah, check out Karen Dalton. She's amazing.
I love all that stuff.
But back from that tangent. Before we wrap up, man, because it's just kind of conscious of time. Is there anything else you want to talk about, plug, or is there anyone you want to shout out?
No, I mean, I shout at everyone and anyone, to the friends and foes around the world, man. Just keep your spirit up. Times are mad. For me, just I hope everyone's doing as well as they can, and I hope that they've got people they can rely on when they're not doing as well as they can. And that's the best you can ever hope for anyone at the end of the day. But let's not victimize ourselves here. We're all struggling. Everyone's struggling. We'll be all right. It's all right. These are important times. We're living through something that as a younger man, I didn't think these times would ever arrive. That's why when we spoke earlier about do we think we'll see certain things in our lifetimes, I didn't think we were going to see some of the stuff we're seeing now in my lifetime, but we're seeing it, so it's one of them things, man. But other than that, big up CFAX and Converse and Barbarian. Of course, big up yourselves and the Shotgun New York's massive. All the Bournemouth crew, the Winchester down there, and all them guys who've done a few gigs in the Winchester in my time.
Shouts to Boogaloo.
Yeah. But otherwise, no, big up everyone just doing their grind, whatever you do, whoever you are, whether you make music, listen to it, or neither. I guess if you don't listen to music, you probably won't be watching this. But yeah, just enjoy your life, innit?
Man, and shouts to you and the internet connection for holding out this long.
It's done well. The personal hotspot's done well. Big up Free. You're a great network.
Nice one, man. And shouts to your missus for letting you use her Skype as well.
Skype. Thank you, Kez, for letting us use Skype.
Nice one, man. So, Aidan, where can you find the podcast when it's at home?
You can find us on all streaming platforms: YouTube, Spotify. What's the other one? iTunes. That's it. iTunes. All streaming platforms.
Netflix.
Definitely not Netflix, man. We're looking into it. The contract's being finalised as we speak.
Checking out you, man, Chess, for coming on, and it's cool the fact that you've been shooting us the odd message every now and again saying you're checking shit and whatever.
Yeah, man. Honestly, it's just fucking surreal that you've joined us for a chat, man, and really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, man. It's been interesting.
Well, that's good. Interesting is good, right?
Yeah, good, interesting.
I would ask you where to find you on social media, but I think we've kind of established.
My account's there. Yeah. I don't know what it is.
But yeah, man, chances are if you
Chester P, you're either going to get me or some weird lunatic who's pretending to be me. They
Or-
might be
or-
more entertaining, to be honest.
or the German task force, but
yeah, or the German, yeah.
But the thing is, man, if you listen to this podcast, then like you know who Chester P is, man. You know who he is. Come on, but Chess, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again for joining us for a chat. Been Shotgun the Yorks. Stay safe, man.
You too, man.
Peace.
Take care.
Take care,
Peace out.
man.